and walleyes. But Cory Rogers from the Blue Line Guide Service assures me that there are also smallmouth and largemouth bass there. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Cory Rogers to the show. How are you doing tonight, Cory?
I'm good, Jay. Thanks for having me on.
Well, you're very welcome. You're very welcome. So smallmouth bass and largemouth bass, you say?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know, I love having guys from other parts of the country. I've had guys from California. I've had guys from, actually, I had your friend Mark on early on in my podcasting career a couple times. Mark Zacher, folks. He's the
human
tournament pro, a bass tournament pro from South Dakota. So largemouth and smallmouth bass.
Oh yeah,
that far north. That's awesome. So what? I'm sure you just have lakes you go to with largemouths and large lakes you go to for smallmouth. But what's the predominant species?
Well, it depends on where you go. So there's lakes here where you mixed bag. You catch smallmouth and largemouth.
Okay.
Several little lakes around here that have smallmouth and largemouth, but I primarily guide out of the Missouri River, which there is a few largemouth there, but it's primarily smallmouth.
So is Missouri River, is that, man,
it's
huge. Absolutely huge.
It runs all the way from North Dakota, all the way through South Dakota, clear into Nebraska, and then down into the Mississippi.
Mississippi, yeah. So you guide Lake Oahe?
Oh yeah, yep. I primarily guide Lake Sharp. It's the closest portion of the river to me, but I have guided up on Lake Oahe a few times, and we've done really well up there.
I know that the Bassmaster Elite Series is going to be there a little later on.
Yeah, I actually marshaled for the Elite Series when they were here in 2018.
Nice.
That was fun. That was out of that. They launched out of Spring Creek that year.
That must have been fun.
It was rough. It was rough. I needed a kidney belt one of the days. I mean, we were running 60 some miles an hour in 4.5 foot waves, but
oh my goodness,
it was rough.
Oh, that would probably kill me.
Full rain gear, Kind of wish I'd had a mouth guard on a couple times, kind of slamming down, but it was fun. I fished with Dustin Connell one day. He's a hoot to have in the boat, to be in the boat with. He's just kind of a jabberjaw, so he talks a lot, but he has a good time while he's out there. Then I fished with Cliff Pace one day. I guess I was out 2 days.
Pace, okay.
Mm-hmm.
There's a guy who's won the Classic, yeah.
So it was a lot of fun. It was a learning experience for me. Getting to ride around with those guys in their boats and seeing the techniques they use. Most of them were very, very similar to what I use, on the river. But they did fish a little bit. They fished some different types of water,
Why don't you explain that?
Well, I'm primarily I like I told you earlier, I like to power fish.
Sure.
I love throwing rattle traps and chatterbaits and, things like that. And I hadn't really gotten into the drop shotting too much as of, 2018. And it was really, of course, their electronics were a lot better than what I had. I've upgraded mine quite a bit since then. So now I have the electronics that allows me to pinpoint a lot more.
So you have forward facing sonar.
Correct. Yep. I have the Lowrance live target. Yep.
There you go.
And it makes a world of difference, especially when you're drop shotting.
Absolutely.
You can see the way the fish react to the bait, whether they're swimming towards it, whether they're swimming away from it. You can
also see if you're just spinning your wheels, if there's nothing there. Right. That's what we use that stuff for down here. When we go by a cypress tree.
Sure.
There's nothing there. Let's not waste our time. Before, we'd be casting 6 or 7 times to it.
Sure.
Now we don't have to. Now we don't have to make those. Just like when you're talking about drop shotting with finesse, you don't want to. Oh, here we go. We have our first wanted 411. So turning on Dan Webb.
That's a buddy of mine in Las Vegas.
Tuning on. Dan Webb. Okay, Dan Webb's here. Thank you, Dan. Appreciate you tuning in.
What's up, buddy? He's been a friend of mine for a lot of years, so I had to say hi.
Great. That's fantastic. Thank you for tuning in, Dan. Okay, so we were talking about drop shotting. Yes, I completely agree with you, man.
One thing with the live target that I found even if you're not seeing fish, if you're fishing a rock pile or some structure like that, you still want to make, even if you're not seeing them, you still want to make a cast, because a lot of times you'll throw something out over the top of those rock piles, and all of a sudden you'll just kind of see everything just kind of come right up out of it.
So those bass were being ambushed predators like they are,
right?
And they were down in those little crevices so that the big muskies and northern pike can't find them.
Yeah, there's a few rock piles that are on the Missouri River where if you go up to look one direction, you won't see anything. But if you kind of make a circle around it, you'll go around and you'll see exactly where the fish are located. Where on a typical sonar, you'd go drive by it one time, didn't see nothing, you'd keep moving. But with that active target, you can actually scan around there, out in front of the boat, and keep that piece of structure away from you. So you're not necessarily disturbing the fish. Like with the old style, you drive over the top of it, and the fish a lot of times get spooked.
Sorry.
It's all right. All right.
People don't start calling me until I start the podcast usually. I agree with you there about that active target stuff.
It's pretty cool. The more you get to use it, like I told you earlier, I like to go fishing for northern pike in the spring, and I do a little guiding for that. But it is phenomenal for that, because you'll see one of them pike come across the screen and it just covers about half of it. You can just see their tail. You're like, oh man, he's right there. It's really fun. I've had some young kids out there, and I typically throw large swim baits for them in the spring. I don't.
Sure.
A lot of guys smelt and stuff like that. That's kind of boring to me, but anyway, I'm like, just cast right over there, straight over there. And he hooked up with about a 40-incher, and
nice.
So that was kind of cool seeing it all on the on the active target. So that was fun.
I think about 32 inches is when northern pike start to gain a little weight and go from this to.
They get the girth. Yep.
By 40, they're
they're enormous.
That's when they start to get fun, is 40 inches. That's when they grab it and when they make a head shake.
I've actually seen them bigger fish, when they bite a bait, like I said, I like using a lot of swim baits. If you fight them for a while, they'll figure out, okay, I can't get off of that. So I've actually had them where they looked right at my rod tip, pointed right at me, opened their mouth, and just started sawing with their teeth, trying to cut the line. So that was kind of a neat thing to see too.
That's when, I'm sure you're old enough, way back when they didn't have braid, and the braid they had was almost like, it wasn't any good at all way back when. So we all just used really heavy mono.
Yep.
And that's why people still ask me, do we need to use steel eaters? I'm like, I haven't used a steel eater since the 70s. Ever since braid came.
Depending on the bait I'm throwing, sometimes I will use a steel leader, because some of the swim baits, they're, about 6-7 inches long, but a 30-pound pike will inhale that. And I've lost several custom-made baits because I didn't have a steel leader.
Even with braid?
Yeah.
You're talking like 40-pound braid. 40-pound braid, I think. Jeez. Of course, I've had on steel leaders down on the coast and had them bite right through them.
Yeah. Well,
that's probably a shark, but.
Probably, or a wahoo.
Yeah, well, I was fishing. I fished mostly the marsh, and we catch sharks and we catch jacks and reds and trout. And
Sure.
I don't know anybody who purposely fishes for sharks, but we catch them sometimes.
I have.
Well, yeah, of course. I don't blame you as a guy who comes down there hooking into a 5-foot shark if you have a guide to deal with it.
Well, we were on a party boat out of San Diego, and
so you had 2 or 3 mates there who could take thing off.
Well, I had about an 8.5-foot blue shark on. I had him on for about an hour and a half. Finally got him up to the boat, and we laid an 8-foot rod down, and he was just a little longer than that rod. But we ended up just reaching down and cutting the line and letting him go. We never brought him in the boat.
Your friend Dan Webb asked if braid will deter most topwater bites. I don't think so, because I tie direct to a lot of braid. Of course, I'm fishing dirty water. You guys are not fishing dirty water. So why don't you tell him your opinion on that for clear water?
All of my topwater rods are fitted with 30-pound braid.
30-pound braid, and you tie direct. You don't have a leader.
If I'm in a grassy lake, I tie direct. Or if I'm in a same color lake, I tie direct. If I'm in gin clear water, a lot of times what I'll do is I'll put about a foot to a foot and a half piece of 20-pound fluorocarbon between the braid and the lure. That solves that entire problem of spooking a fish.
Yep. And I think Mark Zacher just came on. Black Hills Bassin.
That's probably, yep, Black Hills Bass Bandits.
He just called Black Hills Bassin. Anyways, hello, Mark. Great to see you. Great to see you. Great guest. Thank you so much for recommending this guy. I'm having a great time talking to him. I think we've talked 3 times on the phone before we did this. You know, just having a great time, Mark. Thank you very much.
The knot that I use from the braid to the fluorocarbon is called an Alberto knot.
Alberto
knot. It's very simple to tie. You take the fluorocarbon, put it in a loop, put the braid through, run 6 times up, run 6 times back, and put the tag in back through the same way as the braid went in. Let it down, cinch it tight. I actually put a video on Facebook 2 or 3 years ago. So I mean, if you want to dig through that, or just go on the internet or YouTube, look up Alberto knot.
So what's your YouTube channel called?
I don't have a YouTube channel.
Oh, you don't have it anymore?
Well, it's just on Facebook post that I
did. On Facebook, okay.
Yep. But that, if you're in gin clear water, and the thing I really like about braid for top water baits is there's no stretch in it. A lot of times, if you're using monofilament and you make a long cast and a bass sucks in your bait, you don't have enough pull to get the hook set. I still use a medium rod for my top water, so there's a little flex in it, so that gives me the flex that I need to not rip the hook out of their mouth. But the braid, without having it with no stretch in it, you can make a super long cast with a Zara spook or whatever you're throwing, and still get that hook buried in the fish's mouth. So that's my primary reason for using braid.
Very, very good answer there. Very good answer. So the answer is it depends.
Yeah, fish conditions. Yep. It
depends.
And even if you're in that clear water, that little bit of fluorocarbon sometimes doesn't make a difference. It just kind of depends on the fish's mood. Like out here on the river, if these smallmouths get fired up out here, you can throw a whopper plopper on braid all day long and they don't care, But a popar or a spook or something a little slower like that, where they're coming up and maybe getting a look at it, that's when I primarily use the fluorocarbon leader on it.
You brought up a really good point there that I've been talking to a lot of my friends about lately. Is, my favorite method of fishing is a weightless Senko.
Mm-hmm.
Or actually, I shouldn't even say weight Senko, because I use all different kinds of wacky worms.
Sure.
Depending on how deep it is. But one thing I always wanted to do, to have the slowest. And one of my really good friends said, now, wait a minute. How many times have we fished together? And how many times have I caught more fish than you? Because I'm using a Senko, and my Senko is going, Senkos are full of sand.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not really full of sand. It's kind of an inside joke between my friends and I. But, but that thing goes down so fast, the bass really don't have a time to sit there and watch what it is. But, with these smaller ones that I use, they're just kind of going down like this.
Sure.
And with you saying that, with power fishing, the fish really don't have a chance to see what it is. So you just grab it out of instinct.
Yep.
Thus, the reaction bite, thus the beginning of power fishing.
Yeah, if I'm throwing a buzzbait or a whopper plopper or anything like that that's moving quickly on the top, I tie directly to the braid.
So, guys, I don't know if I made this very clear, but Cory is a guide, and if you'd like to call him and be in for some really good, I call it out less, but I'm sure the guys from California wouldn't appreciate that. But if you want some great Plain States bass fishing, think about it, guys. Bass that have not been harassed 24/7, 365 like they are down here.
Yep.
That's what I would like about bass fishing in South Dakota. Some of those bass have probably never even seen a lure. Some of them have probably been caught 5 times, but they haven't been caught 60 times like the bass down here in southern Louisiana, where they get harassed every day of the year except during hurricanes.
We had a trip earlier this year. I had 2 gentlemen from Nebraska come up. We dropped the trolling motor, and 8 hours later, we picked the trolling motor up and had over 100 smallmouth in the boat. We never fired up the big motor.
And you probably whacked fish all day long, didn't you?
Oh yeah, we had over 100 fish. It was just one solid line. We were just working this bank, and of course, it was right at spawn. So we got to preface that, but yeah, it was just phenomenal. A lot of them were 2, 2.5, but we had some 4s, 4.5s. One was pushing 5. And if we'd have dropped out a little deeper on some of the deeper rock piles, we'd have maybe caught, more of those larger fish. But everybody was having so damn much fun. My thumbs were bleeding at the end of the day because I was taking the hooks out.
I bet they were. I was going to ask you if you had bass hands after a day like that.
Yeah, that happens quite a bit here. A typical day.
That'd be the kind of day I wouldn't want to use anything that had on treble hooks because I guided for 17 years. Yep. And when you're on a really good bite like that, I would get out the swim baits, just because they only have one.
Right.
Or would you guys like to jig, and then they start jigging, their fishing, their catches go down, 20 dramatically. But the things they're catching are bigger. But
sure.
I just don't like dealing with those treble hooks, particularly guys who don't know what they're doing.
Well, you got to. Even some of the clients that I've had out a lot of them have been inexperienced anglers. They maybe went fishing a few times, but I'll usually start them off with something like a little swim bait, like a net bait, little spanky or something like that. Then once I can get them to where they're casting good, then I might throw them on. Everybody loves catching topwater fish. If it's that time of year, I'm not going to not have them throw that because it is so much fun.
Yeah, but it's still a buzz bait, that has a single hook. Yep. But what I primarily did is we wacky rigged because they can catch fish. It's very easy to learn how to do. You don't have to do anything. What do I do with it? Cast it out and let it sink.
Right.
And hit the bottom, bring it in, cast it out, let it sink. If they lose, I can cry, because I bought hooks by the hundreds. I was sponsored by Yum, so they gave me 100 packs of Yum dingers.
Yep. We do that a lot with Ned rigs.
Ned rigs. Now, do you use Z-Man?
I use Z-Man, and then I do a little bit of everything. I'm going to show you this. This is one of my favorite hooks right here. This is a Sidewinder from Wicked Weights. I'm going to try to get this in the picture. These guys, it's a veteran-owned company. Jim Sperone owns it. He's up in New York. This is a Sidewinder. Let's see if I can trying to get this in the right frame here. Anyway, you see it's got a little screw lock on it. A lot of times what I do is I'll take a Senko or an Ocho or whichever one of them stick baits that you want to, I'll cut it in half. And I use this. It's a little bit bigger than a Ned rig. I call it a super Ned. It's kind of what it's a little bit bigger hook, a little bit bigger weight. But that little screw lock on these Sidewinders, it holds that bait in place. And I mean to tell you what, it's, with the Senko being a little bit fatter and have a little bit bigger profile, these smallmouth up here just inhale them.
So that's really interesting that you said Senko, because Senko's, now I've only Ned rigged a couple of times because we don't do a whole lot of that down here. Mm-hmm. But a couple of times that I've been up north, the stuff that my friends up there use, it all floats. So it sits,
Sure. Yep.
But you're saying that you like to use and I'm certainly not challenging you. I'm just asking you why would you use something that doesn't float versus something that floats?
A lot of times when if I'm fishing the Senko at some time of year and I rip the hook out, how Senkos are I'll save those.
Yeah.
Cut them and then make a super Ned rig out of them. Okay. That's one of the reasons I do that, because I can reuse the bait several times.
That's one thing my friend did with the Z-Man stuff. I told him, hey, I think I need a new Ned rig. He goes, no, watch this. He takes it off, turns it around, puts it back on. I start catching fish again. I'm like, that's incredible, man.
Yeah. The Z-Man are great products. Obviously I have a ton of them in my boat. I have a ton of them.
I bet you do.
The Ned rigs, in my boat for that. I know they're incredible products. That's one of my favorite ways, especially when I'm targeting the bigger fish. Maybe the pre-spawn females or post-spawn females that are a little bit deeper. Then I'll throw that super Ned because it has a bigger profile. You can match a bait fish a little bit easier with that, with that Senko, especially if you're like out on the river here where there's a lot of rainbow smelt, blueback herring. That little bit bigger profile sometimes does make a difference.
Okay, so if you're using crankbaits, what do you like to use?
I like a lot of square bills, for crankbaits. One of my all-time favorite crankbait, it's a rattle trap or a similar.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Is that the original?
This is a Lucky Craft LV Max 500. This
Okay.
is one of my absolute favorite lipless crankbaits anywhere I go. A friend of mine, Dave Crunden, turned me on to these a couple, 3 years ago. And I'd always thrown rattle traps, but the thing I like about these, this is a full half-ounce bait, but you can see it's a smaller profile.
That is a smaller profile than most half-ounce. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a smaller profile. You can cast it a freaking mile. I will several different ways to fish this. I'll burn it in. I'll, take my rod tip, point it right at the lure, rip it, then let it sink, so it's kind of ripping up and down.
Yeah.
And I will also take this and throw it down in the deeper water and work it like a jig. Like literally let it sit on the bottom, shake it, move it a foot or two, shake it, move it a foot or two. I get a lot of bites on these doing that.
Now, do you do that in current?
I'm sorry?
Do you do that in the lake or do you do that in current?
Wherever.
Wherever, okay.
Yeah,
That sounds like something I'd want to do in current.
No, I've done it in current. I've done it on just flat water, top of rocks, over the top of trees, ripping it right through grass beds like that. If you have that grass that's only about 3-4 inches off the bottom, lay this right in the grass and just shake it. Not even working it like a crankbait, but just shaking it like a jig. That's fantastic technique. I mean, the fish will come right down and grab a whole mouthful of grass and the bait and everything.
I bet they will. They'll pin that to the bottom. Yes.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
One fish that really likes to do that is walleyes. Walleyes really like to pin things to the bottom. I know they're doing it because of what you just said. A walleye would come up with a whole mouthful of grass. And
yep.
At first, when I first saw that, what the heck have you been doing?
Last weekend up at Whitlock Bay, I was throwing this bait. I had a 27, a 28, and a 29-inch walleye. That's
a heck of a day right there.
Yeah, and that's all I was throwing was just ripping this rattle trap across points. I still call it a rattle trap. They're all
rattle trap was kind of a generic classification.
Right, the original Bill Lewis.
Yes, but that's why we started calling them lipless crankbaits, because then so many people jumped on the bandwagon.
Right.
Because
still kind of stuck on the rattle trap.
When I think I was 19 years old when I went to my first duty station as an Air Force air traffic controller. And I was at a guard base called Selfridge Air National Guard Base on the shores of Lake St. Clair, Michigan. Mm-hmm. And I get there and, I loved the fish, but I didn't know anything about it. And so I went down and I rented a boat and I had one rattle trap. And I went out there with a dozen worms and a rattle trap. And I threw that rattle trap and I caught a smallmouth bass, bigger than any I've ever caught. I've been going up to Canada my whole life, up northern Wisconsin my whole life. And I threw it out again. I caught another smallmouth bass. And I did that 2 or 3 other times until my money ran out, of course.
Sure.
And I'm like, I'm going to have to start buying rattle traps. So I bought one rattle trap, a paycheck.
There you go.
Because I also wanted to spend my money on renting boats. And of course, being 20 years old, I could drink legally on the base.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to drink too, but then I had to quit drinking because this fishing thing just got too expensive.
Beer or baits? That's kind of a hard choice there.
Beer or fishing,
Yeah. Another thing I really like about rattle traps, I use it as a search bait.
Yes.
You can throw it a mile. If you get one bite, there's another fish there. You know what I mean? I might not catch all my fish on a rattle trap, but you can, it helps find them.
And that's what I like about smallmouth bass. Is one thing I really miss about living down south. Largemouth bass can be, introverts and live by themselves. Smallmouth bass are all extroverts. They travel around in packs.
Yeah, for the most part. I've seen out here on Lake Sharp, a lot of the bigger fish I catch on Lake Sharp, especially during the summer, are kind of loners. You know.
Really?
Yep.
But
I mean,
also,
I have caught them in schools. Don't get me wrong, I have caught them in schools, but I have caught some 5s, you know, upper 4s, 5s, you know, even a couple pushing the 6-pound mark where I saw one fish on the graph and I caught that one fish and it was a big small.
Well, that's the first thing that impressed me about lake smallmouth bass is, you know, I'm bringing them in and there's 6 of them following them. So not every time, of course, but once in a while you see a whole bunch of fish following that fish in, and look at that. I've never seen anything like that. And this is when I first started really fine tuning my fishing abilities, you know, because geez, it only takes once, one trip like that and you're hooked.
If you're fishing with a partner or another guy, if one person has a smallmouth hooked, the other guy should be reeling in and getting ready to throw right behind that fish, because there's most of the time there's a couple, 3 of them chasing him. You know, I mean, you've seen that on several tournaments. You know, where they got one fish on where they're allowed to use 2 rods. They'll drop another one in, leave the bail open, get this one landed, pick the other rod up, and they've already got a fish on it because he ate the bait while the other, you know, while he was fighting the other one. So they're pretty crazy. Every once in a while down here, we'll come across schools of 50 or 60 of them, you know, where it looks like a wolf pack just burning through there.
That's so awesome, you know, because that's one thing I really miss. I really miss that about living down here is smallmouth bass. I'm going to have to get up there. Yeah, come on up.
Awesome time of the year to come is October. You know, you can go smallmouth fishing until noon, turn around and come back and go pheasant hunting in the afternoon.
Or in October, then you can start fishing for walleyes.
Oh, yeah. Well, we catch walleyes pretty much year round here. Either open water or hard water, you know, through the ice.
We have another comment from your buddy Wanted 411 or 441. He said we need Fitzgerald to tune in.
I sent him a message, said I was going to be on here. So we'll see if he gets it or not.
So what do you primarily guide for, Cory?
Boy, it kind of just depends on the year. I primarily guide for bass, but I start in the spring, you know, right after ice out. It's chilly. It's a little cold. Sometimes you got to go for a boat ride, but I start, you know, a little bit of a boat ride, but I start off in the spring for pike because the big females come up, you know, to spawn, and they're a lot of fun. Then, you know, once the water starts warming up a little bit, then I primarily guide for smallmouth. But then, you know, late May and June, I'll guide for white bass, walleyes. Just kind of depends on what people want to go fish for. I mean, I've guided fly fishermen for pike, a lot of smallmouth. I've had a couple guys just wanting to go walleye fishing. Typically on a normal day, while we're out bass fishing, we'll end up catching a limit of walleye while we're out there.
Sure. We have another comment, Tom Gukwa. He said, come to Wisconsin. We got more water. You know, Tom, I spent most of my life fishing in the waters of Wisconsin. I fished all of those waters, you know, from Green Bay to the Winnebago system. One of my best friends, Mike Norris, is a full-time smallmouth bass guide up on Big Green. I fished with him several times on Green Bean. Big Green. I said green bean. I can't believe. But anyways, yeah, Tom, I'd love to come. I love to come up there to Wisconsin. You know, every time I go up to see my kids in Illinois, I have to sneak away for a couple of days to go to Wisconsin.
Sure.
But okay, so you were talking about how it's not unusual for you during a day fishing for bass to catch a limit of walleyes as well.
No, yeah, that happens all the time. In fact, last week. Yeah, we get a few perch. I don't guide for perch. I mean, they're more of a bait fish type thing. I really don't use a whole lot of live bait. About the only time I use live baits when I'm ice fishing. Everything else is all artificial. You know, so, but we do catch a few perch once in a while, and we get a crappie or two once in a while. But, you know, the smallmouth and the walleye, they kind of tend to pack, you know, be around the same areas. So
I just said that because, you know, yellow perch are my favorite fish to eat.
They're delicious. I think pike is one of mine.
Okay, yeah. Yep. You know, back in the 70s, man, people just didn't. They were so afraid of that Y bone. I'm like, you know, just cut it out.
You know what? The first 2 or 3 you do, you're going to butcher them a little bit. But there's several videos on YouTube that kind of helped me out when, you know, when I grew up here, we caught a lot of pike and we just kind of picked around the bones. But I've gotten fairly good at it now, where I can fillet a pike and end up with just one nice fillet and not have any white bones in it. And they're absolutely delicious.
Yeah,
I
so
got
no, so,
9 or 10 pounds in my freezer right now.
yeah. I really like those pike and those pike and yellow perch. And then I came down here and man, redfish just
Oh, they're
so
fun.
good.
They're fun. We've been down to
Redfish.
South Dakota Island a couple times for specks and reds. That was a lot of fun.
First time I caught one, I'm like, what is this, a carp? And the guy's like, oh, that's not a carp. I said, well, it looks like carp. It got the same scales as a carp. And
Yeah, well, I could see where you get a little mixed up on
they
that.
fight like a carp.
They
They got big old shoulders like the common carp,
Sure.
But I've never seen a carp hit topwater. You like topwater. A redfish, so it will sometimes come up and it'll jump out of the water and grab it on the way down like some bass do. But also
Sure.
I've seen redfish come up, turn upside down because the mouth's on the bottom and
Right.
grab that thing upside down.
Yep.
What? Jeez.
That's
Right
fun.
here.
Oh yeah. One of
That
my
is
favorite baits.
That was my favorite redfish bait.
Yep. I love the way that just turns the water up. Oh man.
And you don't have to do anything special with it. People
No.
always ask me, well, how do you work that? I'm like,
Just throw it out and reel it in. Just change speeds once in a while. See what the fish like.
yeah.
That's one of the
Like-
hardest things. That's one of the hardest things as a guide to get across a lot of people's minds is try to remember what you were doing when you got the bite and duplicate that. Like I got a lot of husband and wives,
Sure.
and
Sure.
9 times out of 10, the wife will end up catching more fish throughout the day than the husband will because
She has no preconceived notions.
Correct. And she's more willing to listen to what I'm saying versus not saying anything bad because I've had a wonderful time guiding. I've met some wonderful people. But by the end of the day, the wife is usually going, ha, 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 bantering back and forth with her husband because she caught more fish than he did. So,
Well, absolutely, because the husbands like to guide the guy. Well, I caught him like this.
yeah.
Well, for the last 6 days in a row, here's how I caught him.
Right.
And then after I've been doing it for 10 years, I just stopped arguing with him. Okay.
Yeah, we do. I do quite a few multi-species trips. One of the things I like about going down to Lake Sharp is, we'll go up on the lake in the morning and catch a ton of smallmouth. I had a good friend. Well, he had started off being a client and ended up being a good friend. Unfortunately, he passed away this spring. But we were out there the last summer, and I think it was May. And he goes, I've caught more smallmouth in the last 2 trips with you than I have in my entire life. He goes, can we go catch some walleyes? I'm like, sure. So we loaded the boat on the trailer, dropped down below the dam, and went down and caught a limit of walleyes. And I think we had 35 or 40 white bass mixed in there too. So we do a lot of, just a lot of fun fishing like that.
That is fun, man. And with a day where you can catch both smallmouth bass, walleyes, and white bass, that's a good day.
Oh yeah, yep. And they throw pike in there once in a while too. So
sure.
yeah.
You were saying about pike. That was when I was a boy. I would go up to northern Wisconsin and Canada with my dad, and my dad is from the old school guys in Wisconsin. There, Tom. At pike or trash fish. Not pike. You got to catch walleyes. We're from Wisconsin, and we
Don't bring that slimy sucker in my boat.
Yeah. After a walleye bite or after a pike bite, you got to change your hook because
Nothing else to bite it.
cut off 3 feet of line.
That might be true there.
That was my dad, but I loved it every time I hooked into a pike. The first time I hooked into a pike and it was coming up to the boat and it was about a 40-incher, and here I was like a 7-year-old boy. Oh, look at that thing! It's so much fun.
Yeah.
And if you catch, I have scars on my hands, where a pike slimed down through, and I had the first hook of a Magnum Rapala in the pike, and the third hook's in my thumb.
That kind of hurts, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, and that thing's going like this, and Dad, what do I do? Cut the hook, please.
Yep, cut the hook and get the back team out.
Yeah,
For sure.
cut the hook, and then after we get back, here I was, all 10 years old. Cut the hook. Then after we get back to the lodge, I'm just going to take a fillet knife and cut it a little bit and pull this thing out.
Oh yeah.
Meanwhile,
Really bad when the barb doesn't come out and the barb's just stuck in there.
Well, if the barb's stuck, if the hook's stuck in your bone, then it's very bad.
Yeah.
As a guide, that happens. I had them in the back of my head. I had them in my arm.
I've been hit a few times. I'm pretty good at getting them out, though. The old string technique works pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah, you're. Let's just be tougher than me.
Well, I'm farther away from medical services here.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. But there were plenty of nights when I drove myself home, put my boat away, then went to the emergency room.
Oh yeah, I can see that. I haven't had that happen yet. We were talking a little bit earlier about search baits, and another one of my favorites is the Chatterbait.
Oh, there you go.
But this one here, this is made by David Burns out of Las Vegas. It's DJ Custom Jigs. When I started, I retired from the police department out in Las Vegas, moved back home. I grew up here in South Dakota. When I came here, I was throwing a lot of chatterbaits, and I was getting a lot of bites, but I wasn't hooking a lot of fish. So I called Dave, and I said, this is my problem. These are too big, but those little tiny ones are too small. I said, I wanted something right in between. So I called him, and we were over the phone back and forth a bunch of times. Anyway, this is a 3/8 ounce with a 3/0 hook, where most of the chatterbaits you're going to get a 4 or 5/0 hook in it. So this is a little bit smaller hook and custom design. He does a really nice job on the heads, and that with you take a little, like I said before, a net bait, little spanky, or like Mark, he helps out Titan Lures. This is one of Titan Lures swim baits. Either shorten that up or use the whole thing. I mean, that makes a perfect profile. Trying to get it in,
Look at that.
Of a herring, or I have a couple other ones that have a little bit of pink in them through the skirt, like a rainbow smelt, and they're absolutely fantastic. They're absolutely fantastic. So that's another one of my favorite search baits. That and a rattle trap.
I bet you like that. And I talked to a lot of these guys from the Elite Series, and a lot of them agree with you that the chatterbait, they like use a chatterbait with a Gary Yamamoto baits, Zako.
Yep.
Which looks a lot like that.
I've used the Zako a lot. I've used the Titan Lures a lot. I've used NetBait Little Spanky a lot. I've used the Berkeley the Deal. The new ones. It's a little grub body has two little tails on the back. Mm-hmm. That adds quite a bit of different action too. Just kind of depends on what the bait fish are. If the bait fish are smaller, I'll use the Deal. If the bait fish are a little bit bigger, I'll choose one of these, like either the one from Titan Lures or NetBait, and make it a little bit bigger profile. Kind of match the hatch.
Absolutely. You have anything else you'd like to show us?
Yeah, there's a couple different things here. I already showed you about the Sidewinder. That's one of my favorite little heads for, super nets or small worms, or a lot of times if I'm fishing in some open water and there's not a lot of, snags, I'll kind of fish that just like a shaky head, just leave an exposed hook. This is another product from Wicked Weights. This is their casting jig. This is one in particular just in black and blue, but the tungsten head, there's a really sharp hook on it, a good weed guard. I'll either have this or a green pumpkin. It's a brown green pumpkin.
So is that a swim jig?
It's casting jig, but I use it as a swim jig or bouncing it off rocks. You can fish them pretty much either way. The head's kind of got a narrower profile. I don't know if I can get, so it will come right through the grass really good. And it's tungsten, so it's a smaller head than a typical lead head. And there's one of these tied on one of my rods in my boat every time I go out.
Sure.
Then the only other thing I really wanted to show you, this a lot of guys around here use a Rapala jig and wrap, for walleye. I started playing around with them a little bit for smallmouth, and I was having some mixed luck. One of the problems was that front hook on the jig and wrap kept getting hung up in rocks, and you know what I mean? Because it has the hook right in there's a hook in the front, hook in the back, and then a treble hook in the middle. Well, I found this company. I don't know if you can see that. This is a excuse me, a ripper mill from Wapsie Lures. It's Wapsie. He's out of Nebraska or Iowa, sorry. Anyway, you see it doesn't have that front hook on it like a jigging wrap does. I don't know if you've seen a jigging wrap. They got a hook right in the front.
Oh, I have, yes.
Well, without that front hook, I can take and bounce this thing right through the rocks and have very, very few hangups. This is a new color. It looks a lot
like a shiver minnow.
It's very similar. Yep. But this is a new color he just came out with. I'm having a hard time with the camera.
I know that this camera is very difficult to get used to.
This color is the Goby. And since I've switched to this particular style without that front hook on it, I've been able to catch a ton of smallmouth bass on that when, ripping it up out of rock piles and, off of points and stuff.
Okay, we have another comment. It's from Wanted 441. He asked if you're throwing much in the way of A-rigs.
Once in a great while. I've tried them on the river quite a few times. I've caught fish on them, and they were all good fish. But I was having more success on the river down here on the Missouri River with a rattle trap or a swim bait, than I was the actual A-rig.
Boy, I tell you, if you have as good a population of white bass as you do, A-rigs, I mean,
they're a lot of fun. They're a lot of fun.
5 out of 6 of them you got white bass on.
Yeah, a friend of mine and I went down to it's actually Lake Francis Case, which is just below Big Bend Dam. The upper portion's Lake Sharp, below is Lake Francis Case. We went down there, specifically went for white bass. And what we did, we basically put a cooler right in the floor of my boat. And I said, okay, when this cooler's full, we're going home. 2.5 hours later, you could not close the lid, and there was 5 or 6 fish flopping on the bottom of my boat. And I'm like, we got to go. The reason is I don't want to clean any more than this.
Yes, I can see that.
But yeah, they're delicious. They're a lot of fun to catch too. But that's kind of a May, June thing around here. You can catch them up on the lakes in the deeper water, but they don't. May and June, they get congregated so bad and so thick where you can throw a little jig and spoon out, throw this ripper out, this ripper minnow out, and just one right after another one. Just a lot of fun.
Just about every cast, folks. I got on that bite on the Illinois River and, around Starved Rock Dam. I've been in that bite in 3 different places in Wisconsin, mostly on rivers. They migrate upstream until they can't go any further. Then there's tens of thousands of them.
Oh, it's amazing. Absolutely amazing. Like you said, just about every cast. And they fight pretty damn good too,
Oh yeah, they don't give up.
No. The typical ones we catch around here, 1.5 pounds to 3 pounds. Every once in a while you get a 3.5 or a little
3
bit.
pounder, that's a big one.
Yeah, they're nice. They're nice. They make a heck of a nice fillet.
And the hybrid stripers go up to 6-7 pounds, sometimes more, but average about 6-7 pounds. And
I've only caught one of them. It was probably about a 10 pounder, and a buddy of mine caught one. It was about 15. That was down at Lake McConaughey in Nebraska.
15 pounds. That
was big.
We're talking like records there.
No, I think I've
really
going over 20 in different places. It's been a while, but
never caught one that big. But that doesn't mean they're not there. It just means I never caught them.
Right. Yeah, that was kind of a Lake McConaughey, Nebraska. That was kind of a neat lake. It's a huge, just like a reservoir where they irrigate out of that all the time. But
sure.
It was kind of a neat lake. It had all kinds of different structure. It had rock, it had brush, it had grass, giant walleyes in there. I would hire a guy to go down there and go walleye fishing, because they get some massive walleyes out of there.
I think I've hired 6 different guides since I've been, paid. Now
Sure.
that I'm a podcaster, they like to take me out just for publicity. But I think I hired six different guides when I was working oil.
Well, the thing about it is, if you're going to go somewhere and go fishing, why not hire a guide? They know where the fish are. They know what techniques are working at that time of year. You're going to end up, like, even if I was going to take my boat and say, go to Lake Okeechobee, I would go out and hire a guide for at least one day, leave my boat set there, see what he's doing, where he's going, what type of structure he's fishing, what pattern he's fishing, and then I might go out and do it myself to see if I could duplicate that or maybe find something different. But it's a good way to save some money.
Well, that's what I tell people. You're going to take 3 years off your learning curve spending one day on the water with Cory.
Well, I'd like to think so.
Well, you do, because, then at least you have a clue. That's
Right.
Every once in a while, some guy would call me. He's a salesperson. He's like, why should I hire you? And I said, well, because if you like the fish, when you're on the phone with me, tells me you like the fish.
Mm-hmm.
Spend a day on the water with me. If you don't like me, don't ever hire me again. But I'll guarantee you're going to learn stuff.
Oh yeah. Yep.
I will show you what patterns work.
I even tell guys, when you get off the boat, they're like, "Oh, where's a good place to go shore fishing?" I'll drive them by and say, "If you come right here at 6:30 to 7:30 at night, you can catch a bunch of walleyes right here. This is what you can use." I love sharing information with people.
And also, I'm going to tell them, I can even tell you where the good places to eat are.
Right, right. Or places you don't want to eat at.
Yeah. Well, hey, Cory, we're nearing the end. So what I'd like you to do now is to do your shout outs.
Okay, I got to give a shout out, obviously, to Wicked Weights, Jim Sperone, Wapsie Lures, Jeremy Menui, Netbait. I've been with Netbait for a lot of years. They make some awesome products.
They sure do.
Maxima Line, Ardent. They have a good pro staff program, and I use a lot of their products. Pretty much every rod and reel in my boat is an Ardent. And obviously, I got to give a shout out to my wife for letting me go fishing so much.
Fishing so much, yes. Without a good wife, you just can't make it. I've found that out.
Yeah, I've been in trouble a few times over the years for fishing too much, but
yes,
for the most part, she's awesome. Yeah.
But now I have a lady a wife who backs me in this, and it's so nice.
It's a passion, though, isn't it? I mean,
it's an absolute passion, obsession, and whatever you want to call it, curse, blessing. I've heard it called every which thing.
Right.
But also, it's a great equalizer. It doesn't matter who you are, or what you do, what race you are. If you're there fishing, we're all fishermen,
Absolutely. You know what? I've never seen a little kid who really got into fishing that ever really got in any trouble.
Except me.
Well, okay, maybe one.
Joe Beck says that daughter and son-in-law say hi, and he said a hell of a guide right there.
Huh. Hi guys. Well, my daughter is expecting our first grandchild first part of November, so we're really excited about that.
Congratulations to you. That's a blessing.
Yeah, I can't wait.
Best thing about grandkids.
Send them home.
He smells. Here, you take him. I changed your diaper 1,000 times.
Well, yeah, I did a lot of that when the kids were growing up. So,
yeah. If I wasn't fishing, I was on duty.
I said hi to my daughter Courtney and my son-in-law Joe. I got to say hi to my son and my daughter-in-law Kayla, Tyler and Kayla out in Las Vegas. Hi guys. So,
there you go. There you go, Cory. Do you have any other shout outs you'd like to say or anything else you'd like to say?
No, if anybody wants to go fishing, give me a call. Like I said, I've taken guys out that were 80 some years old, and I've taken kids out that were as young as 10. So I love showing people how to fish. So
let's break this down here. What cities would people fly into if they wanted to fish with you?
Pierre, South Dakota would be the closest.
Okay.
Or they could fly into Watertown. There's some lakes up there. I would take some people to. Jesus, just they want to fly into Sioux Falls, maybe catch a concert or something there. We're about 2.5 hours from Sioux Falls. It's not that bad of a drive.
Sure.
But I've guided on numerous lakes up here, but primarily the Missouri River.
Okay. So Pierre, South Dakota would be the best one to fly into.
Yep. They can call me. My phone number listed at the bottom, or they can message me on Blue Line Guide Service on Facebook or my personal page, Cory Rogers, on Facebook.
Cory Rogers, our Blue Line Guide Service. Guys, Cory, I just want to tell you, I really enjoyed interviewing you.
That was fun.
You're a great guy to talk to. And you know what, guys? I guided for a whole lot of years, and I've also chartered a whole lot of guides. And as an outdoor writer and podcaster and radio talk show host, I fished with a lot of guides too. You know, it's the personality of the guide that really makes the trip.
I've
I
made a
fished
lot of
with
friends.
1,000 different people over the years, and you know, if they don't have a good personality, I just don't like to be in the boat with them. And Cory has a good personality, and you know, just from talking to him, I've talked to thousands of different fishermen over the years. Cory obviously knows how to fish. You know, so, and believe it or not, I have been out with guides who did not know how to fish.
I have too.
That just made me mad.
I've been out with some guides before, one specifically in Cabo San Lucas for marlin, and I was pretty much running the whole back of the boat, and he really didn't seem to be interested if I caught anything or not. We had a big marlin come right through the spread, and I had him hooked up, and I was hollering and screaming. Of course, he spoke Spanish, and I didn't, but I mean, a little bit different.
Dangerous.
Yeah,
That's
a little bit
dangerous. You don't
different
know what you're
attitude on
doing.
his part. We would have probably caught that fish. So, yeah, I've
Man.
had some bad experiences before. You know, we're full service guide service. I provide all the tackle. I bring the lunch. All you got to do is get on the boat and have a good time.
Wow. Well, great. Cory, I'd like to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to come and talk to our listeners here on the Let's Talk Fishing Guide service. Oh, my goodness, I love that one. Let's Talk Fishing Podcast. And guys, Let's Talk Fishing Podcast is brought to you by my fantastic advertisers, Crusher Lures, the American Bass Club, and of course, Grant Rods. Thank you again, Cory. Thank you, everybody who tuned in. I had a great time on all these comments. I had a great time with you, Cory. And Cory, please stick around after we end the broadcast.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Jay. I appreciate it.
You are very welcome.